Well, the new project, it seems this year everything that I've gone to use or haven't even used has broken and I've had to fix it, so this is just another one in a chain of many repairs. So my Simplicity Mower, which was purchased in 2002, started throwing a little bit of oil. I'll show you where. I'm going to point to it with my finger here. Right out of this weep hole here on this. This is basically your fuel pump. Fuel pump has a line that comes from your gas tank. There's a line that goes to your carburetor over here. So here's the gas tank filter line, and this one goes to your crankcase. It's on the dipstick that goes to your oil, where you add your oil. So that's actually what powers the fuel pump. This is not a cam driven. This is just a suction or vacuum driven pump. So I got to looking at that and I thought, well, easy repair to check would be to see if it's a fuel pump. So I got one for 10 bucks, placed it on there, which is the one you see. I saved the other one just in case it was okay, and it is. So it's not the fuel pump. So that was a $10 cost to check, which would have been the cheaper of the two. But the real definitive thing, other than the fact that, interesting thing is it actually runs fine. Doesn't bog down, doesn't refuse to start, doesn't backfire, doesn't do any of that stuff. So what it does do is, you could say, lose a little oil. And you notice I didn't use the word burn because it really doesn't burn oil. I think it's just dripping out of here and the oil level goes down, which on intact engines is probably not a good thing to have around because they lock up and fry pretty quickly. So I thought the easiest way to check would be just to pull the plug on this thing and see what the plug looks like. So I'm going to give you a close-up of this plug if I can. And I'm going to get out here where the light is better. So I'm going to walk out, see if this thing will focus. But it is just covered with oil and glop and stuff. And not a good thing. And it's really amazing that it starts nicely. But it's all black and oily, and so that tells you we got oil in the wrong place. And the other thing is, when this engine is underpowered, in other words, when you engage the blade and really put it under workload, it kicks out a little puff of kind of a blackish smoke. It's not blue, it's just blackish. So my guess is, as soon as we get this head gasket repaired, which I believe is what the problem is going to be, and they have a tendency to have a weak spot kind of in the same place every time, probably where the carburetor is connected, or I'll know better when I get it apart. But I have the replacement part for this, and I think it's over here under my download of the manual, engine manual. And by the way, this is a Simplicity 32-inch cutter, actually 34-inch cutter, I'm sorry. And this is an Intech 13.5 overhead valve engine. And if I remember right, this is a Briggs & Stratton 284H as in Harry 77. So the replacement gasket is this one right here, which is a 273 280S, and it looks kind of like that. Okay, well, that's what it looks like. And really, where the gasket usually burns through, if I point to it, is right here. It's a wear issue and a pressure issue, and to be honest, it's a Briggs & Stratton screw up. After all these years, you'd think they could get it right, but they haven't, and they haven't really change the engine that much, but they have slightly improved the gasket to some degree over what came out earlier. So got to do what you got to do. So I'll proceed with the repair, and we'll see if that's in fact the problem once I pull the head on this thing. I'll pick up where I left off in a bit. Okay, you finally gotten to the point where I've loosened all the bolts on the head. I took the overhead valve valve cover off. I took the bolts off, of course, and interestingly enough, it was leaking on the bottom, which I guess from what I've read on the internet is pretty common. So I had an oil mess that I had to clean up underneath it. I wasn't even aware that I had. It's been there probably for, I don't know, months, years maybe. On top of that, other than the fouled oil plug, the interesting thing is on this mower there's an adapter that sits right here, and I'll show it to you. It's this thing right here, and it comes off so that the muffler here can mount on it, and then you have a washer between this and a washer on the top, on the back of the muffler, and then there's this bracket here that bolts into the mower to hold the muffler to give it stability. But interestingly enough, this bolt here, as you can see, it goes through the muffler and into this device right here, which is your spacer, I guess you could call it. This thing right here, you can see the broken piece off in the threaded area. Came right off. The other one came off fine, but that one wouldn't come off, but it snapped. So I'll have to get a new piece there for that. But as soon as I pull these bolts out on the head here, and let's see, there's one here, there's one in the middle, there's one up here. I think there's a total of 8, but I'll get back to you in a little bit. Okay, so here we have the inside of the head. You're looking at your 2 valves here, and there's a gasket. You can see where the gasket went. I'm pointing with my fingers. Now the weakest point in the gasket, see, goes all the way around this rectangle here too, and this intake here is your carburetor, and then exhaust port is down over here. Okay, so if you look at the geographics of the construction, here's your weak point right here. And when I took the gasket off, I'll show you the gasket. So when I took the gasket off, which was on there like this, right? Well, that was actually, it was flipped over like this. It only fits one way, see? But the impression that you get when I took it off, I looked at the other side, see? And then that area where that square is, it looks clean. I mean, it looks like there's no deformity. But watch what happens when you flip it over, which is the way you take it comes off the. Now look at there. And that's what it does. The gasket actually degrades. I'll try to improve the light here. It's kind of getting late now. It's about 7:30, 8 o'clock. And it degrades, and then it passes. That's where your oil passes through. See? Right there. And that's what causes all the grief. So we found the problem, diagnosed the problem, particularly with that fouled plug, and definitely with a few other things eliminated, like the fuel pump and the gas cap and and some other things that were mentioned. You know, just go process elimination, start at point A and go to wherever you need to find before you finally get to the most likely culprit, And this particular weakness is a flaw that the Intech engine, and I'm sure some other Briggs & Strattons have, because they didn't design it right in the first place. Okay, they should have had more distance across here, and a little bit more metal, but hey, it saves money, right? Cast aluminum head. The other issue is, I heard that they have changed the material in the gasket makeup. We'll see. But you know, all things considered, this was a 2002. It's now 2013, and I guess some of these deteriorated sooner than others. So this is not too bad a situation, but we definitely know that the gasket needs to be replaced. Just to flip this over and give you a little close-up look now that I got it separated, because this is a little bit different than some of the Intechs that were done that I saw on the internet. So let me move it around. That this thing is actually marked on the inside. I think I'm going to find it here. Okay, get these arms out of the way here. There's a I don't know if you can see it, but there's a, let me see if I can improve the light here. Nah, probably not, but maybe there. Right down there, stamped on the metal, is under the rocker arm there is it says top. So you know this only goes in one way, okay? And then of course your push rods, you've got steel and aluminum. Aluminum goes in the bottom, steel goes on the top. And this is your, if you look over here on the side, see, this is your exhaust port, okay? That's what we're opening here, okay, with this push rod. So this one has to be, the top one has to be steel, higher temperatures. Bottom one is intake, cooler temperatures coming from the carb, okay? Intake of air, so it can be cooler without varying the length of the metal with heat, okay? Relatively speaking, of course. It's on the head of an engine, so they're going to both get hot, but obviously one's going to get hotter. Obviously one's going to get hotter than the other. So is there any other significant issues taking this thing off? Oh yeah, there's an extension over here that I showed you earlier that the muffler mounts to, okay, so that it will clear what it's supposed to. And you cannot take this bolt here out unless you take the extension off on this particular mower, okay? It had to be designed that way, probably because of the limited space that they had where this was mounted. But anyways, that was the only issue. And these are Allen wrenches, nuts that come off for the extension. There's two, okay? Another small issue is this bracket here goes on underneath, like so. It bolts to the engine, and that's what this bracket here bolts underneath like this, and that's what these two things here slide into. There's two nuts, which you see there, okay? And it only can go on one way. But when you put this down, you'll notice once you slide this down on the bolts before you tighten them, there's a little alcove here that keeps you should bring this lid up to the nut as you tighten. And the reason you do that is if you look up here, watch how this top can sag. And what you really want to do is make sure that this comes up just enough so that your cap underneath, you know, your rotating part of your engine, does not rub on the underside of the plastic and start wearing it, you know, slash heating it up, burning it, whatever, destroying it. And just a thought, you know, there's a clearance issue there, but not much. You can use the screen here as your guide, because if you see how it is around the rest of it, you want to kind of make it even, then you have to bring it up, I'm going to guess maybe 1/4 of an inch, just enough to like that, see? Watch right up here, and watch the clearance as I raise that. See, right about like that. So if you look down here, you're looking at this kind of movement here. Like about that, not much. Okay? And of course your carburetor is down here. It's got 2 screws that screw into this to the head, and you just pull it back. You just want to make sure that underneath you check the linkages and the aligning when you go to put it back on. Hand tighten it, and then lift this first and take a look at all your linkages and make sure everything's free before you go tightening it. Another tell on this engine, I don't know if you can see it, but here's where the gasket was. See the pass-through that's been burned or been etched on the metal there? It's not deformed the metal any, but that's where the leak was, which I showed you on the gasket earlier. So look for that. That's a sign on the metal. It leaves its own tattoo, if you will. So kind of an interesting way to show it. Here's your piston down, of course, and that's another issue you could bring up at this point. When you go to adjust your gaps in your intake and your exhaust, which are 0.006 and 0.004, so we're talking about 6 thousandths and 4 thousandths, and there's a leeway of 1 on either side of those numbers. You want to have this, you're going to rotate the top here, you're going to rotate this until you get the top of dead center, and then you're going to rotate it a little bit more to bring it down 1/4 of an inch before you adjust the gaps on your intake and your exhaust. A little bit bigger for the intake side and a little bit less on the exhaust. You got different size openings, and exhaust just doesn't take much to get rid of it from the standpoint of a gap because it's under pressure. But just a thought. And on some of these screws, particularly as it relates to the exhaust, you're going to have to use some sort of you want to spray it with a little bit of I use WD-40. I've used that stuff all my life pretty much, and it's hard to beat, although I have several cans of other stuff that if that doesn't work, I use them, but it seems to work real good. It gets its name, interestingly enough, from the 40th formulation that this company particularly made, and that's where it got its name, W40, and it is actually made primarily out of what I understand is fish oil, particular type probably, and it is basically safe even if you got it in your system, so it won't kill you. Some of these other space age chemicals they're using to do the same job are probably not safe, so it's a lot better. It's a little bit more green friendly, or quite a bit more green friendly from the standpoint it won't hurt your pets and won't hurt you, at least it won't kill you. Some of this other stuff I don't know about, but anyways, just a thought. And because of that leak, I had a little bit of oil collected in here when I opened it up, so you might want to have a rag handy so you can clean up the mess before it gets to be an even bigger mess. But anyways, now all we have to do is clean it up with a wire brush, and I'll show you that underside too, because this is another issue you want to do right here. Okay, you have your intake and your exhaust valve here, and this is really critted up with the carbon. So you take a wire brush on the end of a hand power drill and get one that's kind of medium grit, not too heavy. You don't want to scratch this aluminum up. You kind of use a light hand and a higher rotation and clean it up. Another little issue I found was, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try to get close enough. There appears to be some micro cracks through here, about 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if that was in the casting, but I felt on the inside, and I even looked on the inside with a flashlight. They don't seem to permeate through, and if they do, they haven't seemed to be an issue yet. I'm not sure, again, why that's there, but it might be an issue of stress, unequal heating maybe, cooling and heating. Another possibility would be maybe getting your engine wet while it's still hot. You know, rapid cooling and on a hot engine. I'm not sure, but it's just something else to look for. So if I have a problem with it idling and having sounding like it's not getting a constant supply of air, rather more of a variable, and I can't adjust the carburetor, don't need to, then I'd probably look at something like that, you know. But bottom line, we found what seems to be the problem, which is right here, this gap right here across that you saw on the gasket, and I'll show it to you again. There it is, right there, close up. So, we'll slam this thing back together, and then we'll, after we clean it up, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. Be back in a bit. So here's the tail end of the video on this Simplicity Pacer 34-inch, basically Pacer 1334, with the Briggs & Stratton, if I remember right, it's 278H77, 13.5 horsepower Intech overhead valve engine that I worked on and replaced the head gasket on. Just as a matter of correction, the gap settings on the intake are exhaust are the opposite of what I said. Intake is 6 thousandths rather, and the exhaust is 4. Again, 6 thousandths on the intake and 4 on the exhaust. And the repair went just fine, and while I was at it, sharpened the blades, changed the oil, put a new spark plug in, and put a new air filter in, and have cut the grass twice since the repair. On the first fire up, it worked just fine. Another suggestion on this mower is when you're through using it every time, probably not a bad idea to turn the gas off on the gas line. Just another thing that keeps you from having another associated problem down the road. But it went well, and it wasn't that hard to do, actually. Satisfied with the outcome. Gave it a good bath and gave it some wax, and also greased the fittings, and the outcome was fantastic. So hope you enjoy the video, and hope it helps you if you're having a similar problem. Thanks for watching.